At her birthday dinner, she called me the sponsor, then passed me the check for the whole table. I hadn't ordered anything, didn't say a word, just paid for what I ate and walked out. 2 days later, the restaurant manager phoned me about a payment dispute under her name. I've always thought you can tell a lot about someone by the way they treat people they believe they don't need. For the last 2 years, I was with a woman who treated me like I mattered most whenever she wanted something, and like I was just part of the background when she didn't. The problem was, I was so caught up in playing the provider that I didn't notice she only saw me as the hired help. My name is David. I'm 52 years old, and I run a commercial waste management business. It's not a glamorous job. My days revolve around logistics, dumpsters, and industrial contracts. But it's a very successful company that I built from scratch with 2 decades of hard work. It has given me a lifestyle I never imagined when I was a young man with a single beat-up truck. 2 years ago, I met Megan. She's 29, beautiful, and has an infectious energy that drew me in. She worked part-time in marketing, but her true passion was being a social media influencer, a job that seemed to consist mostly of taking selfies in expensive outfits at trendy spots. I was happy to support her. I paid the rent for our lovely downtown apartment. I covered the payments on her luxury SUV. I funded the vacations that set the scene for her online presence. I thought I was being a good partner. Now I see I was merely being a good employer. The disconnect between our worlds created a quiet tension. My friends are guys I've known for 20 years, plumbers, electricians, and other business owners. We enjoy regular beer and talk about football. Her friends were a rotating group of aspiring influencers and hangers-on who spoke in a language of brand collaborations and online engagement. When our worlds collided, she would get a tight, strained look on her face. The breaking point came last Saturday on her 29th birthday. She decided she wanted to celebrate at the Oak Room, one of the most exclusive and pricey restaurants in the city. She didn't just want a table for 2. She wanted to host a party for 12 of her closest friends. She said she wanted it to be a night she would never forget. She had no idea how right she was. She left all the planning to me. I called the restaurant, a place I often visit for business dinners. I know the manager, Carlos, and he always takes good care of me. I booked a private section, confirmed the reservation, and left my credit card on file, as is their policy for large groups. The unspoken understanding, as usual, was that I would cover the entire bill. The night of the dinner, I wore a tailored suit and my best watch. I wanted to make her proud. When I arrived, she was already there, holding court with her friends and a glass of champagne. She looked stunning, and for a moment, I forgot all the little red flags. She kissed my cheek and thanked me for arranging everything. The dinner felt like a performance. Her friends talked about their recent trips, their new designer bags, and their social media strategies. I was an outsider at the table, a silent observer from another world. About an hour in, a woman who had just joined their group, named Madison, asked the inevitable question. "So, Megan, I've never heard the story of how you two met," she said, motioning toward me. The whole table fell silent, staring at us. Megan let out a little laugh, a high-pitched, rehearsed sound. She waved her hand dismissively in my direction. "Oh, Madison, this is David," she said, her voice laced with condescension disguised as humor. "He's my backer. He makes all of this possible." The table erupted in laughter. Not kind laughter, but the sharp, cruel laughter of an inside joke I wasn't part of. My backer. Not my partner, not my boyfriend, not the man I love. My backer. A term that reduced our entire relationship to a simple, crude transaction. I was the bank, the ATM, the guy who makes all of this possible. I felt my face flush with a hot wave of pure humiliation. I looked at Megan, waiting for her to correct herself, to say she was just joking. She didn't. She just smiled, basking in the laughter of her friends, and took a sip of her champagne. She wouldn't even meet my eyes. And just like that, something clicked in my mind. The hurt and confusion vanished, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. This wasn't a partnership. It was a business arrangement, and the terms were no longer acceptable. I stayed silent through the rest of the meal, through 2 more courses and 3 more rounds of drinks that I knew were costing a fortune. I watched them, this pack of laughing hyenas, completely oblivious. At the end of the meal, the server brought the bill and, without hesitation, placed it on the table. Megan didn't even look at it. She just picked it up with 2 fingers, slid it across the polished wood table to me, and said, "Here you go, babe." This was it, the final act of the show. I took the bill. The total was just over $2,000. I looked at it, then at her. I gave a small nod, then excused myself from the table, saying I needed to find the restroom. I didn't go to the restroom. I walked straight to the front and found Carlos, the manager. He greeted me with a warm smile. "David, is everything to your liking tonight?" "Everything is wonderful, Carlos." "Thank you," I said. "Listen, I have a somewhat unusual situation. I need to leave, but I want to settle my portion of the bill now." Carlos looked confused. "Your portion?" "Yes," I replied, pulling out my personal credit card, not the one on file for the party. "I'll just be covering my own meal and drinks. The rest of the bill is for the birthday party that is on Miss Daniels." I'll never forget the look on his face. He was a professional, but for a split second, he understood everything. He saw the whole picture. He simply nodded, went to his terminal, and printed out a separate bill for my steak and 2 glasses of whiskey. It came to $180. I handed him my card. When he brought the slip back, I added a $200 tip. "For you and your staff, Carlos," I said quietly. "I'm sorry for any awkwardness this causes." He shook his head. "Don't worry about it, David. We'll handle it." I walked out the front door, got in my car, and drove home. My phone didn't start buzzing for another 15 minutes. First, a text from Megan. "Where are you? Are you coming back?" Then, 10 minutes later, Mark, the waiter, texted me. "What did you do?" And finally, the frantic phone calls began. I ignored them all. I got home, poured myself a drink, and sat in the quiet of my apartment. The silence was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I was done being a backer. Update 1. The 2 days after Megan's birthday dinner were a lesson in what happens when an entitled person collides with a hard reality. The frantic calls and texts continued late into that Saturday night. I didn't answer a single one. The voicemails she left were a journey. They started with confusion, then moved to righteous anger, where she accused me of humiliating her, and finally landed on panicked pleading when she realized I wasn't going to come back and rescue her. I found out later from Carlos what happened after I left. Apparently, the server returned to the table and presented the remaining $1,800 bill to Megan. She laughed at first, thinking it was a joke. When she realized it wasn't, she caused a scene. She told the server there had been a mistake, that I was paying for everything. The server calmly explained that I had already settled my personal check and left. Her friends, the ones who had laughed at her backer joke, suddenly went silent. None of them offered to chip in. They just stared at her, expecting her to handle it. In the end, she had to put the entire amount on her credit card, which I now know was nearly maxed out. Her public performance as the carefree birthday girl ended with her being personally responsible for a massive bill she never intended to pay. She didn't come home that night. I figured she stayed with one of her friends. I used the time wisely. The next morning, I did a complete audit of our life together. I went through bank statements, credit card bills, and shared accounts. What I found was worse than I thought. She had a supplementary card on my primary business account, meant strictly for household emergencies. The bill was filled with thousands of dollars in charges for designer clothes, high-end cosmetics, and rides to and from expensive salons. It was a clear and sustained abuse of my trust. I also found her influencer business plan, something she had been working on for months. It was full of projections and goals. One section detailed her strategy for securing long-term brand partnerships and private funding. It didn't take a genius to see who the primary source of that private funding was supposed to be. I wasn't her partner. I was a line item in her business plan. That afternoon, I methodically packed her belongings, everything. The designer handbag she cherished, the racks of clothes she barely wore, the equipment she used for her social media posts. I didn't throw anything away. I packed it all carefully into professional moving boxes, labeled them, and stacked them neatly in the spare bedroom. Then I called the phone company and removed her line from my family plan. I contacted the insurance company and took her off my auto policy. I was surgically removing a tumor from my life. She finally showed up at the apartment on Monday afternoon. She had her own key, but I was waiting. I had already put the chain on the door. I opened it just enough to see her face. She looked tired and angry. "We need to talk," she said, trying to push the door open. The chain held firm. "I agree," I said calmly. "Let's talk right now. Is this a conversation between a boyfriend and girlfriend, or between a woman and her backer? I just want to be clear on the terms of our discussion." The color drained from her face. "That was a joke, Mark. A stupid joke. You're being so dramatic about this. Was it a joke when you spent $5,000 on my business credit card for your personal shopping? I asked. Was it a joke when you planned to use me as your private funding source for your influencer career? Was it a joke when you slid an $1,800 bill for your friend's party across the table at me? She stood there speechless. She had no idea I had looked into everything. I've packed your things, I said, my voice flat and emotionless. They're in the spare room. I suggest you arrange to have them picked up. As of this moment, our backing agreement is terminated. You need to find a new place to live. I closed the door on her sputtering protests and locked the deadbolt. The call started again, but this time I answered. I told her she had 48 hours to have her things professionally moved out, or I would put them in a storage unit at her expense. This leads me to the main event. 48 hours after the dinner. Tuesday morning, my phone rang. It was Carlos from the Oak Room. David, I'm so sorry to bother you at work, he said, sounding stressed. We have a problem. We received a notification from the credit card company. Megan Daniels has disputed the charge for her birthday dinner. I felt a slow smile spread across my face. Of course she did. What's the reason for the dispute? I asked, already knowing the answer. She's claiming the charge was fraudulent, Carlos said, exasperated, that she didn't authorize it. It's a $2,000 charge backdated. We have to fight it, provide proof she was there. It's a huge headache. This was the moment. The moment she had handed me all the power. Her sense of entitlement had made her sloppy and foolish. Carlos, I said, my voice calm and reassuring. Don't worry about it for a second. I'm going to handle this. You know I'm a good customer, and I won't let your restaurant lose money over this. I will personally cover the full $2,000. Just do me one small favor. Anything, David. You know that. Send me a copy of the official chargeback dispute she filed with her bank, the one with her signature on it, claiming fraud. Send it to my personal email. He agreed immediately, sounding immensely relieved. 5 minutes later, a PDF landed in my inbox. It was an official bank document detailing the disputed charge, and at the bottom was Megan's digital signature attesting under penalty of law that the charge was fraudulent. She had just committed credit card fraud, and she had no idea I had the proof right here on my computer screen. She thought she was fighting the restaurant. She had no idea she was about to be fighting for her entire future. Final update. It has been 4 months since Megan's birthday dinner. The life she so carefully crafted has been completely and systematically dismantled, not by my anger, but by the cold, hard weight of her own actions. The day after I received the fraud documentation from Carlos, I had my lawyer draft a formal letter. It was delivered to her by a courier while she was staying at a friend's apartment, having been forced to leave mine. The letter was straightforward. It contained a copy of the chargeback form she had signed, a copy of the restaurant bill, and a statement from Carlos confirming that she and her party had been there and consumed the food and drinks. The letter laid out her 2 options. Option A. She could sign the attached promissory note, a legally binding document acknowledging her debt to me for the $2,000 I had paid to the restaurant on her behalf, as well as the $5,000 she had charged to my business card. The note had a strict repayment schedule. Option B. If she refused to sign, I would turn over the fraud documentation to the restaurant, support them in filing a police report for fraud, and also pursue my own legal action against her for the credit card debt. She was trapped. Her attempt to escape an $1,800 bill had now put her in a position where she was facing possible criminal charges and a much larger legally documented debt. She called me for the first time in days, sounding like a completely different person. There was no anger, no entitlement, just fear. You can't do this, David, she whispered. I'm not doing anything, I told her. I'm just showing you the consequences of your own choices. You committed fraud. I have the proof. Sign the papers, Megan, and this can all remain a civil matter. Don't, and you can explain your side of the story to a judge. She signed the papers the next day. Her friend, who was a notary, had to witness her signature on a document that legally bound her to repay every dollar she had taken from me and tried to steal from the restaurant. From there, her world fell apart with impressive speed. The friend she was staying with asked her to leave, not wanting to be involved in her drama. She ended up having to move back home with her parents, 2 hours outside the city. The influencer lifestyle she was trying to build vanished overnight. Without my apartment as a backdrop, without my money funding her wardrobe and travels, her social media feed became a ghost town. Her friends from the dinner party stopped calling her once it was clear she was no longer a source of free high-end meals. She had to get a real 9-to-5 job, an entry-level position at an insurance company, to start paying off the debt she owed me and her parents, who were apparently furious about the whole situation. Every month, like clockwork, I receive a payment from her. It's not much, but it's a consistent reminder that actions have consequences. As for me, life has become peaceful. My business is thriving more than ever. I have reinvested the money I'm no longer spending on a sponsorship back into my company, and we have landed 2 major municipal contracts. I sold the expensive SUV she used to drive and used the money to give my entire crew a well-deserved bonus. I started dating again a couple of months ago. Her name is Sarah. She's a landscape architect who owns her own small business. She's smart, funny, and sometimes has dirt under her fingernails, just like me. We met because I hired her firm to do the landscaping at my new office building. The other night, I took her to the Oak Room for dinner. Carlos, the manager, treated us like royalty. He brought over a bottle of his best champagne on the house. "To new beginnings, David," he said, raising his glass. Sarah looked at me, confused. "You seem to be very popular here." I just smiled. I'm just a good customer who believes in paying his bills. We had a wonderful dinner. The conversation was easy and genuine. We talked about our work, our families, our dreams. Not once did I feel like I needed to be someone I was not. The bill came, and we split it down the middle without either of us thinking twice about it. As we were leaving, I saw a young woman at the bar who looked vaguely familiar. She was arguing with the bartender over the price of a drink. Her clothes were a bit too flashy, her makeup a little too heavy. She looked tired and angry at the world. It took me a second to realize it was Madison, one of the friends from Megan's birthday dinner. Our eyes met for a brief moment. I saw a flicker of recognition and then a wave of shame wash over her face before she quickly looked away. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel anything at all. She was just a ghost from a different life. A life I had fully and completely closed the door on. I took Sarah's hand, walked out into the cool night air, and didn't look back. I was no longer a backer. I was just a man who had finally learned the value of sponsoring himself.